Hey, it's Dave. Welcome back to my channel. So today I thought I would play my Gary Kramer Crusader, which is basically like a Strat made by Gary Kramer. The final Crusader that came out was not like this model. It had a bound neck, I believe, and had a humbucker. But it's pretty cool. It has this switch to turn the neck pickup on. And these are made in Korea. And the reason why I wanted to bring these up, because this is an OEM manufactured guitar. So this guitar was not manufactured by Gary Kramer. It wasn't manufactured at his factory, but he went to another factory and had them make it to his specs. And this goes on a lot with guitars today that are basically OEM. You have companies like PRS that go out and have World Manufacturing make their overseas line of guitars. Now, World Manufacturing is not owned by PRS. They're their own company. They've been making guitars for Schecter and other companies for years. They make great guitars. And in fact, their guitars are so great, I believe that's why PRS doesn't have them make the same carved tops on the SEs, because it would then be hard to justify why pay the $2,000 extra for the USA-made one. So in a way, I do believe that sometimes the OEM manufactured guitars can actually hurt your sales. But at that point, you're really just becoming an importer. You can go to the NAMM show at any time, go downstairs, and you'd see all the Asian manufacturers lining up. And they have their guitars on display. If you want anything similar to these, like a Strat, and then they have the neck through with the wings. They have that style, which is very much like the Ibanez basses for years. They have that style. And then basically you give them your shape headstock, and they come back and say, how many do you want? And, depending on what country you go to. So in the beginning, obviously in the 60s and 70s, Japan started the whole rage, and then they got really good. And when they get good, it gets expensive. Then, manufacturing went over to Korea. And it's still good in Korea. It's actually still great in Korea. But, it took a long time to get the Koreans up to speed. And now it's in China. So, if you were to buy, let's say, a Gibson Epiphone model made in Korea, it's more than likely made at the Samick factory. Now, Samick made some guitars for Fender. In fact, when Gibson tried to buy Samick, Fender kind of got in the way and was like, well, wait, they make our guitars. We don't want our guitars made by Gibson. That would have been completely bad PR. But you do have to understand that a lot of these companies are not selling you guitars that they are manufacturing themselves. To give you an idea, Sony used to be the premier television maker in the world, and now you can go buy an LG and a Samsung, and they're probably the best. And if you think Sony still makes great stuff, open them up, and those components are all Samsung and LG who are making the parts for everybody. Because what happens, and it's sad, I was in manufacturing, is countries just stop making regulations that they think they're helping the environment, or they think they're doing something. Like you can't get, you can't spray nitro in most states because they feel like it's bad for the environment. But they're spraying it, like somehow in Tennessee they're spraying nitro, but that's going to keep it in Tennessee. It's going up into the atmosphere. It doesn't matter. But the point of the matter is you kill all those jobs, and you take that money away. I mean, if you look at manufacturing, to the overseas level, it's like it always goes overseas because everybody wants it for less. And the regulations on wood, the regulations on everything else drive up that price. Now see, I don't even know if this you're even seeing that's the wood grain. I don't even know if that's the wood. It sounds like it's wood when I knock on it. But that could be a picture. I have no idea. This thing could be in 9 pieces together. It wouldn't matter anyway. It doesn't change the sound of the guitar, although half the people out there believe that it does. And for them, let them go spend more money on a 1-piece and 2-piece body because they think it's going to affect the tone. But the point I'm trying to make is, just so you know, so certain manufacturers, G&L has their G&L line, and then they have their Tribute line. And their Tribute line is made in Indonesia. It's not made by G&L. They don't have a factory there. They don't own a factory there. They're going to another factory. And this is why you can go on to websites like Alibaba and go buy these guitars direct, because they're just selling them out the back door. They don't have any regulation, and they just don't care. You can do that with China. I mean, I don't know who's making Epiphone, but I can tell you right now, you go to Alibaba, they're selling them with Gibson headstocks on them for the same price. And then when you get it, it's all got the Epiphone parts. You can take up the Epiphone pots. It's got the pickups. It's got the Epiphone tuners, but it says Gibson on the headstock, and that's the Chibson everyone seems to be loving. And then there are small guys, builders out there who work for those companies and then do it at their home and do it on their own so they can make extra money so they can live. Because... but it's funny because a lot of people think like these big companies, oh no, they have to own that factory in China. Yeah, China's a communist country. Go over there and tell them you want to own the factory there. So when you're buying an OEM, just know that you're buying an OEM manufactured guitar. It's not made by the company, and usually the company will back it up. There are some companies that go above and beyond. Schecter, for instance, they have a pretty good maintenance where they look at everything that comes in and check it before they send it out to the stores. And ESP does some pretty good stuff. I can't divulge a lot of the inside stuff that I know on any of these things, but I do say, in general, they make a pretty good product, and they go to factories that make a good product. Now, when you see like the $99 guitar, and you see a Schecter, and you see a Dean, and you see them all, and they're that satin cherry or whatever, that black cherry, but it's satin. I mean, every guitar company seems to have had one in the last 10 years. I mean, they're all pieces of garbage, and they're all being made in the same factory. I mean, you got one guy sitting there making the same exact guitar, and he's changing the shape of the headstock, and that's it. So that's what you're buying. When they get to some of the higher-end stuff, I wish they would have taken the time, because some of the companies do. They go over there and they develop with the company. I had a company approach me, a company called Tesla Pickups out of Korea, and they wanted me to help them design their pickup as far as like listening to it and voice it and figure out. And there was no pay, and it was nothing for me into it. So I was just like, I don't see a reason. So I didn't. And but like a lot of people, they just put the JB, the Seymour Duncan, which is an aftermarket pickup, the Seymour Duncan JB, and then the 59 in the neck, and they're like, and if you look, that's like maybe 80% of the imports that come in. They put those two pickups in, and they're like, oh, this is great. Yeah, it's not. But just because it's made overseas doesn't mean it's a bad guitar. So I picked up this guitar. Now, I don't even know what Gary was selling these for, but this was a prototype, and Gary sold it to me for $200, which it was very much worth it. And I swapped the pickups. This is a DiMarzio Pro 54, and that's an Area 58, and that's an Area 58, which is basically, we'll call that from this point on my single coil configuration. It's what I have it on my yellow, my white, my black, and this guitar. So I have 4 guitars with that configuration. And it's, again, Pro 54 by DiMarzio, Area 58, Area 58. It's what I like. It's, I think in the bridge, that single sounds great. If I put it on clean, it's really bright. I can throw it into what I call the 4 position, what Fender calls the 2 position. However, this would be the 2 position if it was in Hebrew, because I'd be reading it backwards, but it's the 4 for me because it's 1, 2, 3, 4. I'm looking down and I see it numbered that way. But anyways, it's a great guitar. It's got the Wilkinson bridge. It's nice. It's very nice. I like it a lot. It's got the staggered tuners. I'm trying to think what else I did to this. Eventually, I would like to stainless steel the frets. This is one of the few guitars I have that's got a small C, which I'm not that crazy about a small C neck, but that's why I don't play. 0.0. Oh, Dean Warm is just giving me my grade point average. But for the most part, I don't really play it that often. This is my guitar that I take out to beat. So in other words, if I get a rehearsal, I'm throwing this in my car, I'm leaving it in my car, I got my little Vox amp that I bring, and then I go to my rehearsals. And this is basically what I bring for my rehearsal. But, you know, it's a great guitar. And you can find many great guitars made overseas. I just think, for the most part, like, just know the difference between a manufactured guitar that's manufactured by the company or one that's manufactured OEM. I had a guy make a comment to me about my Strat, and he was like, well, I don't see the difference between that and the Gibson, the Chibson, you know, because you're taking a Mexican Strat and putting a different neck and it still says Fender on it. Well, I took a Mexican Strat that was manufactured in the plant that is owned by Fender. It's not an OEM plant, it's a Fender plant. And I put a neck on that was licensed by Fender to make replacement necks. So in all intents and purposes, it has Fender's, it's a Fender. Chibson is being made by a company or a person that works for a company that makes Epiphone. And they're selling them with the Gibson logo illegally. And they don't really even work for the main company. They just happen to be working for a company that's authorized to manufacture for them. They are the licensed manufacturer of Epiphone. And that's where, you know, it's not the same thing. But, I mean, for the most part, if you go on, there's a buddy of mine that does a website, Max Carlisle. And Max is a great player. I used to know Max back in the Gold Gyms days and West LA Music days. I haven't seen him in a while. But he goes on and buys crappy guitars and shows you that they can be great. And he's 100% right. I mean, there's nothing wrong with these things. And if you want to spend the time and you're like a dilettante of some kind and you like to spend time, you know, fixing the nut. Now, this nut is a plastic nut. Would you hear the difference when I played that solo to the Def Leppard song if it were a bone nut? No, you wouldn't be able to tell. You know, I have people like saying to me, "Oh, like if it was just a square piece of wood with the pickups in the same place, would it have the same sound?" Of course not. No, of course it would. But someone's saying it to me like it's a ridiculous idea. I'm like, and I don't want to keep getting into the wood argument. It's the laws of physics. If you don't believe in the laws of physics and you believe in Doug Henning actually performing magic and not illusions, even though he always says it was illusions. Why am I bringing up Doug Henning? God, I love Doug Henning. But anyways, it's the same thing. It's if you want to believe in magic, but don't argue you have proof. Because here, I'll show you some proof. Here's my proof. Look. You see this one is bigger than this one and this one's smaller. Yeah, measure it. Oh, no, I can hear it. Measure it. And when you measure it, you'll see that it's an optical illusion and that they're the same exact size. Well, the same thing when you play with music, you have audio illusions. When I'm sitting here playing, I'm hearing the way the guitar sounds. Even when I'm plugged in, I feel like there's a sound because I can feel it against my body. Now, if I left the room and played this guitar and put a mic in front of here and recorded it, or even plugged it in the way I do it during the thing through the USB, and I'm in the other room, and then I go and I play the exact same thing on my other Strat that has these exact same pickups, and I could say to you which one was which and what I feel differently, but when I come back to play those two audio tracks back, they're going to be the same. There's no way they can be different. It's physically impossible. Now, I've heard and I've seen some people post stuff where they actually post different examples of each, and I'm like, yeah, but I can play the same guitar and make it sound that different. It's really not different. It's just, you know, if I can sit and play and plug in and play one thing and then make it and then play it again and say, ooh, now which one did you like better? If you couldn't see the guitar, and I could have 50,000 people sit and say, oh, that one, A is better. Yeah, and then tell you at the end, yeah, well, they're both the same guitar and you're all assholes. Thank you. But the bottom line is, it's true. You have to listen for, like, what is different about it. Is it different because I'm picking it different? Or, you know, and then I think when you go, and I'm just going to say it one more time, measure it. Go tell somebody at MIT how the laws of physics don't work for your guitar because you can hear the difference. And I love that because, you know, I mean, I'm not even going to go into it, but I've had people in public tell me, oh, I can hear the difference. And then they play for me, and I'm like, can you tell the difference of being in tune? No. Therefore, thank you. But anyways, but that's what an OEM guitar means. That's about it. I just want you to know this. So OEM is the company that is on the headstock might not be the company that's manufacturing the guitar. And again, in cases of like the Fuji Gen Fender in Japan, that's not owned by Fender. That's a separate factory being made OEM. And they're a great factory, and that's why those Japanese Strats are great. Korean companies like World Manufacturing, I think Rira was a good one. I forget the one that Schecter bought, but they bought one of the good ones. Wolf was a good one in Korea. They make great products. There's some dogs out there as well. In China, no one's owning any of those things. So if you have something made in China, I mean, I remember when like the Guild acoustics. This is when Guild was owned by Fender, I believe, at the time. Yes, the Guild was owned by Fender. They had the Chinese, the GAD series, the Guild acoustic design, and I think some of the Eastmans, and there was a bunch of guitars that were all made in the same factories out there, but they're all OEM, and they were good factories. I think they're great. I think the Epiphone Masterbuilt was made out of a great factory, and I think it's kind of ridiculous that instead of keeping the whole line, every few years they take away a guitar and they keep some guitars, but that EF500R from Epiphone and the Masterbuilt, that should be made all the time. It was a great guitar for the money, and I would recommend it to my students. And right now I've been recommending for a good Chinese acoustic guitar, the Blue Ridge. There was a Blue Ridge, and then what are they called? Revival? Why am I blanking on the name? They dropped like two of their best guitars, and so I'm done. Recording King. And I'm done with Recording King because every time I like a guitar, they stop making it. So, and I've had like my students buy them, and then it's like I tell another person, and then it's like no longer made. And I'm like, F off. Yeah, everyone likes to make vanilla. Nobody wants to make V-necks. Nobody wants to make. They just all want to make the same exact guitar. Oh, Taylor's selling a lot. Let's all make a Taylor. That's all I got for today. I had a gig get canceled because the Bruins are playing tonight, so I'm off tonight, and I figured I would shoot a video. So, my loss is your gain, or your loss, depending on how you like these videos. Anyways, very good.
Look who's throwing stones.
You're right on target. Right on the money. Everything you said. You hit the nail right on the head with your comments, what you're saying today. You're 150% correct.